The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Hi, and welcome to Chasing Purpose. I'm your host, Kathleen Connor, and if this is your first time here, I'm really glad you found your way in. And if you've been here before, well, I hope you're here to stay, so welcome back. I have to tell you that this topic around standards and what we receive, what we accept is what we receive, was a really hard one for me to get through this week. I can tell you that I procrastinated, I thought about it, I wrote things down, bullet points, everything. I went back and forth on what standards actually mean to me and for me. And it was a bittersweet topic. It certainly is. So let's get through it today the best we can. And I'll be honest with you, this episode is something that I still am pretty wobbly about in this topic. So you'll hear it in my voice and you'll hear it in my examples that I give you. But I just want to tell you it's an important one, and that's why I stuck with it and didn't change topics and didn't shift the subject at all. I don't want to avoid it. It tends to be something I need to work on, and that's why it's important for me to get through it today and through the rest of my life with. And so what that means for me is that standards, when I started writing it, it started to feel like things that I wanted for myself, the standard I would hold in how I, act every day, or go to the gym, or what I eat, and my health and my ability to really be present with people. And I thought, man, that sounds more like resolutions than standards. So I had to step back and I had to really think what standards meant and what they mean to me. So standards to me mean that what I would expect and receive from people, how their tone affects me, and whether or not I'm going to allow a bad tone or a bad comment to stay and land where they want it to. And to be honest with you, I often have in past, I often let it sit and maybe suffered in silence, or maybe even got triggered by that and started a fight. But now I actually talk about things. I actually present things in a different way. Maybe not at that time, maybe a couple minutes later, but I will say, that wasn't respectful. I didn't appreciate how you said that or what you said. Let's step back and try to make things better. So if you're listening to the show today, I want this to be something that we're both learning from. So as I said, there's part of this that I still struggle with. I can tell you on a scale of 100, 1 to 100, and 100 being that A plus that we all strive for, maybe that whatever the subjective perfect is. In setting standards, I'm probably a 87.3, still a passing grade. And past, I was probably a failing F, that was for sure. But I want to improve in this topic, and I want to improve in this area of my life, because one of the things that I've talked about in past episodes is something that my father said when I was growing up, and he said it a lot. It was something that stayed with me, and something that not only I heard, but I felt and that I became. And what he told me over the years was that to have a friend, you needed to be a friend. And that really resonated with me as a kid, as an adult, and as I am right now. I work at my friendships. I work at all the relationships that I have. I do things to be there, to be present, to be an active listener, to participate. I'm the connector. I'm the person that creates activities. I'm the one that makes sure that I check in on important dates, events, and things happening in your life. And even things that aren't important, I still check in. I have told you in the past, and as you know, I have a lot of friendlies, and I know it sounds like an exaggeration, but I probably have a million of them. I have kept in touch and stay in touch with people from all ages of my life. I still talk to people that I went to kindergarten with. I still talk to not only my college roommate, but her family and people that I've kept in touch with and people that I've met in my travels and in my work environments and all forms of my life. I keep in touch with people, and that's important. So when my father said to me, and I took it in all earnestness, that I had to be a friend to have a friend. Like I said, I understood it, I felt it, and I live it every single day. And I actually tell my son about it as well. I think that it's important for him to know that he doesn't need to be friends with everybody, but to be friendly with everybody. There's no reason not to be. But one of the things I had a hard time learning, and even now into my 50s, I still have a hard time learning how to. And my father never said the words and how to do this. And I really either didn't hear them when people told me, didn't understand them, or I didn't ask enough questions as to how to do this. And the how to is how to release relationships or people when it doesn't serve me. I'm not great at that. I pride myself again on having a million friendlies, and I keep in touch with everybody and every walks of my life. And that's important to me. But when a relationship no longer serves you, when a person no longer adds value to your world, no longer allows you to grow in areas of communication, of intellect, of emotion, and of care, what do you do? And that's the big question that I asked myself when I wrote this is what do you do in those instances when you have relationships that no longer fit you, that no longer serve you? And that part of that is you set standards. You don't have to move away from people unless you feel the need to. I don't, as I said, and that's what I'm not great at. I thought about it, I've had probably two relationships in my life, two out of the million that I've had, that I don't talk to the person. And it's not because I wouldn't want to talk to the person. One is my ex husband. I don't talk to him, not because I don't care about him and I'm not curious about what he's doing or his life or care about the family that he and I shared with his extended family, with his parents and his siblings. I was with them a long time. Of course, I would be curious about their lives and interested in how they're doing. We just don't. The relationship ended. We didn't have any kids. We grew apart. We lived and moved into separate areas of the countries and into separate relationships after that when we were ready. And so there was nothing for us to say to each other. And that sounds horrible. And of course, I could think of things to say to him. I could thank him for the years and the experience and the lessons that I learned through that relationship. But he doesn't want to talk to me. And I think that that's okay and that's his choice. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't want to talk to him. And that's the standard that I often find myself in. I work, as I said, extremely hard in relationships. I'm a great friend. I think any of my friends would tell you that. I would certainly be there for anybody and anyone that needs me in any capacity. I would do whatever I could in any situation. I overthink my friendships and relationships and connections, that's for sure. When they're going bad, I tend to overlove or overdo or over communicate. That's who I am. And I'm not clingy. I'm not that person. I don't have an anxiety or an attachment disorder of all those things. I just love people and I'm curious about them and I'm curious about their lives. And like I said, my birthday is coming up next week. And I will hear from people from all walks of my life, and it will bring a smile to my face. People I haven't talked to in years, people I haven't seen in decades, people I've gone to high school or college or met through some work environment. Someone will reach out to me and they all bring a smile to my face, and I will hence reply back because that's who I am. I will acknowledge their communication and care to me. I won't let the conversation, linger or dwell into anything unhealthy or anything that it shouldn't be, but I certainly will participate in it and thank them for that. And that's who I am. So in those things, I always wonder, And I don't know, my father never said it, nor did anybody else in a way that resonated with me enough to know what to do when you have to set a standard so strong that you realize that the relationship isn't serving you anymore. And I always looked at relationships like my ex-husband or the other relationship that I mentioned as that it was a failing. It was something that I didn't have a choice. They walked away from me from that relationship, and I was left standing there puzzled and confused as to why they couldn't continue to communicate. Yes, we couldn't live in the same house and we couldn't love each other as husband and wife, but we still had years, decades of being together and shared memories. And like I said, the family extension was important as well. So it was hard. It was gut punch when that no longer was available to me. So writing this episode and this title and this topic was tough, I will tell you. I had to look straight at it. I had to really understand why it took me so long to figure out why I was procrastinating and why I couldn't even start and why I couldn't get my creative juices flowing. I think I am a creative person, and I think I'm a great writer and a great auditory, and I couldn't get my words and my thoughts around this topic. And I just thought it was so important I didn't allow it to move away from me. So the standards that we receive aren't necessarily the ones that we deserve. They're not the ones we dream about. They're not the ones that we absolutely strive for. They're not the standards that we tend to give other people. They're the standards that we accept and the standards that we allow. And that was really hard for me to think about because I often set a standard about my communication, about my emotions, about my expectations within a relationship. And when somebody says something back to me, I have to hold the line. And that's a standard that I have to do. And I have to do it within friendships, within partnerships, within my parenting relationship. I have to say those things. I have to be clear. And I wasn't always clear with the standards that I would accept. Sometimes things would be said to me or about me in front of people that I would just take. I would stay silent. I would let them rest and kind of cool the emotion and the room. And I no longer do that. I don't pick fights as I used to. I don't get triggered in that way, but I do often in a couple minutes or in a day try to circle back and tell that person what their behavior or their patterns or their words did to me, made me feel. And so sharing a feeling with them, I hope, would bring upon a change that behavior wouldn't come again if it was unhealthy. If it was certainly healthy and joyful, I would hope that would come more often. So those are things that matter. That we have to think about what happens in those thousand small things that we do to people and that other people do to us. One of the other things that I do without without really even thinking about, because this is the type of person I am. My strengths, my biggest strength is the relationship part of me, is loving and being curious and doing everything I can for people in my life. And that also is my biggest weakness as well, that I will give unto others as I do not receive from them. And that is a really hard thing to learn, is when things are so imbalanced, when there's this balance of me. I often talk to, not often, but I have said to my friends or to a core group of people that sometimes I feel as though I'm pushing a wheelbarrow. I'm pushing, a relationship or a person, and that weight, I just seem to be pushing it in a direction that I want it to be. And then the last, several years, I realized that I'm putting that wheelbarrow down, that I'm not willing to take the weight of somebody else's limitations with me anymore, that I'm willing to hopefully help them work through their limitations to make a relationship better that I have with them. But they have to want to change. They have to want to do it. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they feel as though there's no need, there's no determining factor, there's not a real desire to change, to do things the way that maybe becomes a compromise, or maybe becomes in a growth or an evolving way. So you have to work towards that. So today isn't about really raising your standards. Everybody has already told you about that, about how to raise them up, raise the bar, level them up, expect more, right? Give good advice. Today is about what we do and how we feel when we do it, and when we do it enough that it falls in an area that doesn't serve us anymore. And what do we do then? So we're operating today, which I will tell you another weakness that's still part of the same weakness I just mentioned. But one of the weaknesses that I have is that I often give someone that I love or someone that I care about, and I love people in my life. I love my friends. I love the connections that I have. I generally tell people that I love them. I think it's important for them to hear it. And that's important to me. But I often give people passes as well. I take their excuses or their explanations or their reasons why they can't show up in a relationship with me or for me the way that benefits us as a whole, as a collection, or even as me as an individual. I often have to give passes. I tell myself that. I say, how many more times do I have to just say it's okay when it's not okay? So with setting a standard, that's where it's becomes that it's not okay and I'm not going to allow it anymore. That's the standard that I'm setting. It's showing up and showing others that how their moods, their emotions, their anxiety, and really, if you boil it down to, we've talked about it, that two emotions, that fear that they have isn't welcomed at my doorstep anymore. It isn't welcomed in my ear and in my head and in my heart anymore. I can't take it. I can't take someone else's fear or emotions that they can't handle and put it into the wheelbarrow and continue to push it. I just won't do it anymore. And I do it, and I tell them this now with kindness and care and compassion, because that's important too. I don't just stop around and say, how dare you, or who do you think you're talking to, or any of the patterns that we might have heard as a child. Those aren't things that work for us anymore. So it doesn't come easy to set a standard. Again, it's not a boundary. Those are two different things. A standard is that I'm just not going to participate. I'm just going to quietly disengage. I'm going to not have you affect me anymore. I'm going to train myself to be someone different around you so that you behave differently, so that the reaction that you receive from me is no longer what it was. And you turn the dial, you make them think like, oh, that was different. Oh, wow, she didn't do what she always does. And you make them sit up, wake up, and think about, wow, what is changing? And people often try to talk to you or to me, let's just put it that way, in a way that could be controlling. They want to control the atmosphere, the mood, or the environment. And people are manipulative. Let's just be matter of fact about it. Let's not hide that fact that we are manipulative as humans. We want human connection. And not only do we want it the way we want it. So therefore, we try to manipulate and control the situation so that we receive things only the way that works for us. And that's a boundary. A standard is more like, I understand what you're saying. I just don't like the tone that you're saying it in. We can have this conversation maybe when you're feeling better or when emotions aren't as high. A standard is just withdrawing in a way that's compassionate and kind, as opposed to setting such a firm boundary that nothing gets resolved. In my opinion, a standard is just saying that I'm going to circle back. I'm going to talk to you about this when I feel better. I'm not going to lash out or let you lash out to me. We're not going to continue the fight or continue the conversation. It's not healthy. So we arrive at it later on, and we set standards where we're not being triggered. where we're not participating, where we're being softer with our own tone. We're setting situations and expectations so that things change for us. The way that we prompt change in other people is that we change ourselves, and then people either come along or they don't, right? We either people stay with us again through that essence and vibration and frequency that we have when we change and bring it up. They come with us or they don't, they fall aside, and other people will come meet us at our essence and at our frequency and vibration. And that's what's important too. So you, and in any situation, you receive things from people that may not meet your standard. You may, in a work situation, not get the email in a timely manner, not get somebody to show up at a meeting when they should have. You may get a friend who missed out on a dinner opportunity or just didn't show up, or a joint workout, or a situation or an engagement. And maybe the deadline for something just passes, and you constantly forgive the person. You constantly are always giving again that pass, giving them, listening to their excuse, their explanation, their reasons for why they couldn't show up and be there or deliver what they said they were going to. And finally, you don't want to hear their excuses anymore. Certainly, you don't want to hear apologies, right? I often tell my son that an apology is great. And it's important if that's what he wants to share, but it's more important, not the words, it's the change in behavior. An apology is really just words unless there is that change of behavior, unless the next time something like that happens similarly, that it doesn't happen the same way, that he changes his behavior and therefore I change my behavior and we end up with a different outcome. And hopefully it's healthier and more productive than the time that we fought. So those are things. So we have to stop giving passes and have to stop looking for people to give us those explanations, those excuses, those things of why they can't show up, and just understand that if they don't show up for something and they don't deliver something, that they can't be relied on. We can't then decide that we're going to include them anymore. I have a house rule. Most of you or most of my friends know about it. Certainly people that get invited to my parties know about it. And it's a soft rule, but it is one. When I have a party and I invite you to my house or to an event that I'm having, you get invited 3 times. It's kind of a 3-time or 3-strike rule. And, you'll get invited to a party and I'll hear your excuse. I couldn't do it. I had other obligations, those types of things. Now, I don't just have a party and call people the day before or the day before. I tend to be respectful not only to my time and planning, but to theirs. I try to do it within at least a 4 or 6 week time frame, so people know what's ahead of things. And if they have a reason at that point to tell me, oh my gosh, I have a wedding or I'm traveling that week or those types of things, and that's great. I understand it. I'm not always looking for an excuse or an explanation. I don't want to hear them after a while. But if you continually to just not show up to my invites or to my parties or to my events after the 3rd time, you probably won't get invited again. I can tell you, you won't get invited again. And that's not a threat. That's just something like, I don't need to chase you to come to my party or my event. I don't need you to feel like you need to be there or to be asked. My mother, when she was going through the end of life, and not her health wise, but when she was living on her own and she was looking for us kids to step up and do more and be more present with her life, which we were. Someone was with her every day. We maybe didn't stay overnight or for as long as that she wanted us to, but we were there for her, my siblings and I. And I often found when something was going on in the family, like a birthday party or a shower or a christening or some dinner or something, she would say no to. Oh no, I'm not going to go. Nope, I just don't feel like it. But really, she often did those things because she wanted you to keep asking her and try to convince her to go. And at times we did want her to participate and go. We did want her to be there. And so we often did ask her. But there was a point where after a while, it didn't serve us. It was a lot of work to get her to understand that if she didn't want to go, it was okay with us. It was okay that she stayed home. And sometimes it was safer for her to stay home. Sometimes the restaurants didn't have a ramp for her to walk up, or didn't have great lighting, or didn't have the convenience of, of certain things as she was aging. And so towards the end, I think we all kind of decided, because of our own, I don't know, reasons, and the reasons for anything out of kindness, was that we weren't going to convince her. We were just going to let her say no. And I think people try to do that when you invite them to a party, or you invite them to an event. Even this weekend, I had an invitation to go to a neighborhood party. And I was excited about it. And there was an event going on in our family where my partner was going to go camping with his sons, his older sons. And I think he wasn't, he kind of threw it out there to see which one I really wanted him to go. Did I care that he went out of town, or did I really want him to go, to the neighborhood? It didn't matter to me. He was a grown adult and he could choose whatever one suited his needs. I knew I was going to the neighborhood one. That was important to me. There were new neighbors coming into the neighborhood. I was building a great relationship with them. I was excited to see the house and the renovations they did with it. And so it was important to me to do that, to show up to them. So I didn't bother to talk him into anything. I did what I wanted to do, and that was to go to the party. And so none of these moments were big, traumatic, or dramatic events. Setting a standard is a decision. It's something that we do within every conversation, within every interaction that we have with people, whether it's people we've had years and decades of relationship with, or just met them in the street. We wouldn't see a stranger and they wouldn't say F off to us, and we'd accept it, right? We'd set a standard and not stay in that situation. We would walk away from it and maybe say, like, shame on them, or that's disappointing, or that really affected me in those ways. We wouldn't try to be or create a relationship that wasn't there. And those are things that I have to remember. My father never taught me that. No one ever taught me that. And I'm trying to teach myself that. And again, in my 50s, it's really hard because I'm a relational person, is what happens when your standards that you're setting aren't being met. And I have a situation where I have somebody who's been in my life for years, and I love them. I love the fun, the conversations, the community. I love everything, but I can tell right now they don't want to participate at the same level as they did. They don't want to create a balance. They're withdrawing. They're coming at the situation with kind of a flat tone and a flat, non-committal type situation. A lot of we'll sees, I'm not sure, those types of things. Even in our conversations, it used to always be about, how are you? Tell me about your day. Tell me about your life. What's happening in your family? And now it's more about work. How's work? How are things going with work? So I see that it's moved from what could have been an emotional topic through my own emotions or my family emotions or situations that were going on, to just kind of a flat little work. And so I recently had a conversation with them about, I've seen a change and I felt a change. And, it's really hard and feels off when I'm assuming our relationship is continuing in the path that it was, and it doesn't feel that way. And I talk to them in person, and I talk to them in text. I talk to them, as I always would, trying to repair and fix and overthink and overgive and try to figure out how I can be better and do better. And then I realized it's not me. This is them. This is their choice. And I can't make somebody participate in a relationship the way that I want them to, in the way that they have, if it no longer serves them. So that's the situation. So I am moving to a point and to a place where I'm acknowledging, and I don't do that anymore with my words, but I acknowledge that, hey, I don't need to put myself out there and tell you things about my day, about my emotions, about my family, about my life, if you're not interested in them, if you're not going to communicate, if you're not going to engage at that level. I'm just not going to put myself in a vulnerable situation where it's not there anymore, where it's not reciprocated or balanced. So those are decisions that I'm making. I'm trying to figure out the balance of what that is, whether it's just short term that they're dealing with, mothers aging and travel and all kinds of things that they're dealing with their life. Again, I hear excuses and explanations and reasons and all kinds of things that they're distracted and why they can't do things as they could with me or with our relationship. And I have to validate and respect the things that they're sharing with me, their reasons or their explanations. But they're, again, after a while, unless I see changed behavior or a leveling off of participation, engagement, effort, care, and priority in the relationship, then eventually it just fades away. And those are the things that I have a hard time really doing or wanting. And certainly, I was in the past. I'm better now, and I am, like I said, the 87.3% better now that I don't stay. I don't not communicate when something doesn't work for me. I think standards and the lack of them, or receiving a standard that doesn't serve us anymore, can compound, right? The way money and habits do. The standards we allow in any moment become the standards we allow in every moment, right? They become a pattern, they become a lifestyle that will accept someone's tone, will accept someone's comment and someone's maybe disparagement when it's not needed, warranted, or welcomed. So you just have to start being more careful about how you participate in those relationships and how we can determine what is healthy for us and what serves us, and try to work within those standards and that choice that we have. We don't have control over other people's feelings, emotions, or behavior, but we have control on how we receive it and how we respond to that. We have control over ourselves, and we have control over the time, energy, and really where we want to be and where we want to live our lives and in what relationship we want to stay in. So we really need to find out what happens there. So a lot of this is about, what I think about as standard, it's about acceptance and allowance and that balance. Therefore, what happens when we start accepting things versus what happens when we start allowing things. So those are things that I really want to talk about, and how when you're on the phone with somebody, you're accepting maybe their tone or their comments or things that tighten up your stomach, that make you roll your eyes or do that heavy sigh or do something that is just because of them. Instead of staying in that relationship or that conversation, and your body knows it actually, and it'll give you signs before maybe your mouth and brain does, that you'll know when things are off. Your body will show you and tell you. And the difference is, what are you now accepting? What are you allowing to happen? What standard are you willing to receive and willing to accept on your doorstep? And those are things that can certainly do and have those things. So you have to stop kind of trying to turn water into wine. People aren't going to change or transform unless they really want to, and unless they work at it. You have to continue to have a standard that works for you, that that you're being true to yourself. When I tell my friend that, hey, I can see that things are really burdensome right now for you, and that you're not available for our weekly chats, or there are times that we usually have together during the months or whatever it is. How can I help? And then we try to come up with different situations where we pick a different time or we pick a different thing. But if they suddenly don't have any input into how things can be better or how things can perform in a different, healthier way, then it just doesn't land, right? Things have to grow together. Things have to move in the right direction for both of us. And I find it was sad, and it was hurtful in a way that I didn't expect it, when I told this person in a way about what wasn't working for me and what was hurting. and that their silence or their lack of acknowledging me or understanding my feelings, how it was not healthy for me. And they received that by changing the subject. And I could have ripped into them. I could have really shown them the way that they were participating in that situation was a perfect example of what they were doing and what I was saying was hurting. And what I did was I just took the change of subject and said, that's not working for me in my head, and just decided to start moving away, start not participating when they couldn't participate. Again, the relationship is there, it's intact, and right now it's just kind of in a lull. It's in a position or in a place of observation. It's in a place of where is it going, and what do we both want from it, because we both have to want the same things. We both have to want it to be something we work at. You cannot, as my father said, you cannot be a friend and have a friend if the other person doesn't want to be your friend or doesn't want to work at the friendship. That only becomes frustrating, and it only becomes excuses, explanations, and hurt. So we have to figure out what acceptance looks like and what the standard that we will allow to not only receive but to give means for us. And like that, it is just silently thinking about things, how things land when someone says something, when someone does something, how it makes your body and your head and your heart feel. And if it continually feels unbalanced, unwelcomed, unwarranted, then you have to decide, are you going to change your standard? Are you going to change your approach so that the relationship changes, so that things become healthier and better? And whether that relationship stays intact or not, that may be the healthier and better. If it doesn't, if it does, great. If it doesn't, well, it can cause a little bit of pain or a lot of pain. But in the long run, you cannot continually grow anything if it's not being nurtured and nourished by all parties. It's just not fair. It'll only grow one side, right? So that's what I can tell you. And that's why this situation of this topic is hard for me. And you can hear it in my voice when I bring it up. I'm better with it. I'm glad I pushed through the topic. But standards are something that I just have always been maybe more adaptable, more accommodating in relationships than other people want. And I often think, not often, sometimes I feel as though I get taken advantage of because people know how relational I am, know how much relationships mean to me, right? I've had, oh, she won't ever leave a relationship. She'll never go anywhere because, they're so important to her. Well, there's a point where exhaustion and a lack of vulnerability, safety, and growth come into play, that I have to decide that that's just doesn't work for me. I could have continually tried to call my ex-husband and asked about his parents and asked about his siblings and asked about him. I could have continually tried to step to that door, to that threshold, and cross it. It wasn't worth it to me. It just became a point where he wasn't willing to share, and I wasn't willing to get the door slammed at me to try to have those conversations of care about someone in some family relationships that I wasn't welcome into, right? So therefore, that's what happens, is you have to decide whether the relationship is welcoming to you or not. And if it is it welcoming enough that it will grow into something, into a friendship, into a trusting partnership, into something that you can care and love through. And those are things as well. So again, I haven't decided the term. My father's term about being a friend to have a friend is powerful. I think it's an amazing story. I wish he would have a line. I wish he would have trademarked it, and we could have made a lot of money as family, and we could have really marketed it. Perhaps we wouldn't have, but I don't know what the next pieces. I don't know what and if it doesn't, what happens? I need that. I'm going to think about that. I'm going to think about what happens. So I think standards come into play. I think we set a standard and we accept what we receive. And so if we're receiving things that no longer serve us, no longer are healthy, the tone, the communication, the comments, the participation from someone that no longer fits or feels right, use that word, but feels healthy and productive, then that's a decision that we need to make. Is that relationship worth our time, our effort, and maybe our money? Maybe we're talking to people, our therapists, about them. Is it really worth the money or the time and the energy and the feelings we put into a relationship if there's nothing there? So those are things that we have to think about. I often hear it with my clients sometimes when they say, well, I'm unhappy with my relationship, but I'm staying for the kids and I only have 8 more years or 4 more years or 5 or 3 or whatever the year number is, or once I hit this with my personal growth, then I will do this, like an if then statement. And I don't know, I just think while we're doing that and figuring out and making some kind of line of succession or a plan or a goal, if this happens, then this, what are we doing with the standards that we're receiving? So we can all stay in a relationship longer than we should or could, but are we receiving the standard of care, kindness, tone, behavior that we deserve? Can we change our standards so that what we received works for us better than things in the past? Can we do the things that help in everything and in every way, so that our stomachs don't tighten, so that our jaw doesn't clench, so that we don't walk away from a conversation or a time with someone who we love and we leave stressed or with a headache or with a heavy sigh or a rolling of the eyes? Is that what we can do? So we have to figure out what standards we're willing to put out so that we can accept and receive what is healthy and what is productive for us. So we have to think about that. I think I want to leave you with things to think about. I want you to stop carrying guilt. I want you to stop carrying the performative social optics that you need to stay in a relationship and perform a specific way. You can stay in a relationship and change the standard. You can stay in a relationship and change the standard of pace, of balance, of communication, of tone, of expectation. Those are the standards that you can receive and expect, and that you're responsible for. You're responsible for the standards that you accept and receive. So if you're receiving, again, a good example is my teenage son. If you're receiving something from him, if I'm receiving something from him in a way that doesn't serve me, it's best to not get triggered by that. It's best to talk to him. It's best for me in our situation, for me to talk to him after about what he did at that time and why it didn't work and why it maybe could have triggered me, or maybe he could have approached it in a different way. Again, he's a teenager. His frontal cortex is not fully formed yet, but he is very mature. We spend a lot of time talking about emotions and about patterns and about behaviors and about things like that. So it's important to acknowledge when a standard is being met as well. Let's not start with and stay with when standards aren't being met. It's perfect when standards are being met, that we show gratitude, that we show appreciation, that we show just the joy and the acknowledgement that somebody is meeting them. Someone is, hey, I loved the conversation that we had today. I loved that you came and talked to me about something that was bothering you in a productive and healthy way. I loved that you showed patience and understanding when in the past I saw and could have seen that not happen. I appreciate really stepping up in a direction that worked better this time. So it's important when we do receive the standard that we and accept the standard that we receive, and it's a healthy one, that we we acknowledge it, that we sit there and we stay in a place of gratitude and being grateful for that and thank them for that. So don't hang on to hang-ups around someone's standard, around what they're not doing and what they are doing in a way that you don't appreciate. Change the way that you're responding to that. Change the way that it triggers you. Change the way that you receive, and change the standard that you allow. And I can tell you, again, I'm not 100%. I'm working my way there. I'm better today than I was even before this episode, because it made me think about the standards that I want to receive for myself and the physical things that I feel when I'm in an unhealthy and receiving an unhealthy standard. So those are things that I need you to actually think about and care about. So just acknowledge the good, the standards that you do set and that are received. Work towards adjusting the standards that you are accepting and receiving if they are unhealthy, imbalanced, and they are not working for you. Communication goes a long way. It can fall on deaf ears. I can tell you that. It can shock you when you share something of emotion, of pain, of hurt, of change that you want somebody to do to make a relationship better, and they become silent or they change the subject. That is information. It may not be the information you want or the behavior change that you're looking for, but their communication back to you, their acceptance, their standard on how they reply is information. So remember that. So remember that it isn't what my father said. It's important to be a friend. To have a friend is to be a friend, and you need to do both. But you also need to set standards and remember when relationships and standards aren't being met and you continually talk about them and you're continually asking for healthy and productive changes and they're not coming, that maybe, just maybe, and I have to say this to myself too, maybe it's time to walk away with grace and kindness and acknowledge that it's not the right time, acknowledge that it's not the right place for that relationship to grow and evolve. So don't fight with somebody. Don't get triggered by anything that they are doing or aren't doing. Be grateful for the person that you are. That's what you have control of, is in your own emotions and in your own habits and reactions. So remember that. Set your standards the way you want to receive them. Set them, understand them. Again, people will see a change. They may not like it. They may push back. Hold your line. Hold your standards. Walk proud. Stop pushing the wheelbarrow of other people's limitations and start living a life that's set for you so that your standards are being met, because that's where pure joy, pure love, pure evolution, and pure growth come from, is when you're living an authentic life for yourself with your standards that you're setting. So it can become exhausting at times to do the change and to stumble and to not remember the change and to take something and grit your teeth instead of and allowing it, instead of asking for the change that you respect and that you accept in the future. So stick with it. You'll get there. And so will I. Again, I'm not perfect, and nor do I ever want to be. The day I become perfect is the day I think you sprinkle me or put me in the ground. So let's just be honest. We have to set the standard that we told them. We have to hold the line, do it with careness, kindness, and compassion. With every relationship comes effort, care, and priority, no matter what the relationship is, whether it's with your child's teacher or a partner that you share your life and house with. Everything becomes that. Those things have to be aligned. They have to be met. Sometimes they're not. People and things get in the way, and that's understandable. But grace can be given, understanding and situations can evolve if things and people are ready to have them evolve. So I want you just to hold that. If this podcast and this conversation meant something for you and it's something that resonated with you, please like it, please subscribe, please leave me a review, send it on to someone else who you think might listen to it and get benefit from it. That's how we get exposure. That's how I love to hear from you. So thanks for showing up here today, not only for yourself, but for me. It's important. This is an important topic. It was one I could have cried over. I did cry when I wrote it a lot. Thanks for listening. And until next time, keep chasing purpose.